Hello, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well. We're back in Microsoft Flight Simulator for another tutorial in the PMDG 737, and in today's video we're going to be discussing the basic functions of the heads-up display and how we use it on a final approach into Edinburgh. So the plane is all configured for our landing, and I've actually paused the sim so we can go through the basic setup of the HUD. So with that in mind, let's get started. So firstly I'll show you how to activate the HUD. So we go into Setup and then Aircraft, and then we go to Equipment, and we need to scroll back to page 12 of 17, and then we'll see the HGS installed option, and we hit yes, and that gives us another couple of options which we can also activate for the heads-up display, but I'll leave those off for now. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've installed hardware wise then. So if we look above the pilot's seat, we can see this large grey box, and that is the projector for the HUD, which basically projects all the info down onto our little screen here, which we can flip down, and that's what we look through as we're coming into land. And if we look a little lower down, we've also got this little control panel installed here, which lets us select which mode we're using, along with another couple of options. And we also have on the first officer's side this little annunciator panel, which basically lets us know which mode is activated. Okay, so here we go then. That is the primary view of the HUD, and if we take a look at our little control panel that says PRI at the top there, you can just see, so that's the primary mode is selected, and that is essentially an exact replica of our PFD and can be used for takeoff, climb, descent, approach and landing. And the second mode we're going to take a look at is the IMC mode. So let's come down to the control panel and flip that to IMC, there we go. And if we take a look at that, we can see it's a sort of decluttered version of the primary mode, but this can be used for autopilot and flight director approaches. And then the next mode is VMC mode, so let's switch that over to VMC, and that's basically exactly the same as the IMC version, but it's used for visual approaches, so you don't get the flight directors on that one. And then finally we have the A3 mode, so let's flip that onto A3. And that's used for ILS approaches and landings, and it also gives us some rollout guidance as well. And that's what we're going to be using on our approach into Edinburgh today. So in a bit more detail then, we've basically got everything we need on the HUD now. There's our vertical speed, just above that we've got our current altitude, which matches what we have on the PFD, and then over on the left that's our current airspeed, and then a bit further over that's our indicated airspeed, which is the same as what we have set in the window. And let's just take a little bit of a closer look at some of the features that aren't on the PFD, which gives the HUD a bit of an advantage. In the centre of the HUD we have the flight path symbol, which displays the actual flight path vector of the aircraft, and then the smaller circle just above that there is our flight director, and the aim of the game is to keep that centred within the larger circle. And then we have a really cool feature, which is the 3-degree glide slope line. So that dotted line there, as long as that is kept pretty much in line with our touchdown zone, or sort of where the pappies are, we're not going to go too far wrong really. And then we also have this little chevron arrow here, which is our flight path acceleration, and if that's above the wing we're accelerating, and if it's below we're decelerating. And then this little rectangle here is our speed error tape, and that shows us how far out our current speed is to our indicated airspeed. Okay, so that's basically it for our displays and symbols. The only other thing we could do is change the brightness of the HUD itself. So if we just click this button here, which I always have trouble with, I'm never quite sure whether you push it or pull it. There we go. So as you can see, that's way too bright. So basically we want to be looking through the HUD, not getting distracted by it. So we can sort of turn that right down, and I think I'll go with about there, because as we approach the runway we don't want to be distracted by all the symbols on screen. Okay, so what I'm going to do is unpause the sim and we'll take a look at everything we've discussed in action. As you can see, our glide slope is captured and the plane is all configured for landing, so let's unpause the sim. There we go. And if I just zoom in a little bit, we can take a bit of a closer look at that display. So our autopilot is doing a pretty good job of keeping our flight director in the centre of the flight path vector. We can see there our current airspeed is 152 knots, so our speed error tape is showing that we're about 2 knots too fast because our indicated airspeed is 149. Our flight path vector is pointing directly at the runway, which is exactly where we want it to be, so that's good. And as we can see, our 3-degree dotted glide slope line is pretty much bang on the touchdown zone and in line with the PAPIs, which is also exactly where we need it. And I'm just monitoring that chevron, which gives us our flight path acceleration, and as you can see, that's exactly in line with the wing, which is where we need it to be, and our airspeed is the same as our indicated airspeed, so we haven't got any errors on our little speed tape either, so that is all looking pretty good. So I'm just going to pause the sim one more time so we can take a look at a couple of other settings on the control panel. Okay, let's take a look at the runway chart for Edinburgh, and as you can see, we've got a runway of 8,392 feet, and we can actually add that in on our little control panel down here. So click on the runway button and it says runway length, and we can add that in 8392 and hit enter, and then it also gives us our airport elevation, so we can check that on the chart as well, and our airport elevation is 136 feet. So again, back down to the little control unit, and we need to, I think I need to again the runway, but there we go. So now we can add in our 136 feet for the airport elevation. So we've got our elevation and our runway length, and you can also change the angle of our glide slope, but we'll leave that on 3 degrees. Okay, so let's unpause again and we'll continue with our landing. Okay, so continuing to monitor all those readouts then, everything's looking pretty good speed wise. We're now, 5.4 DME from the runway, just passing through 1,300 feet, and I will disengage the auto thrust and autopilot around about the 1,000 feet mark and hand fly our landing. And we have 2 whites and 2 reds on the PAPIs, and you can see that 3-degree glide slope line passing right through there, so that tells us we're bang on profile as well, so that's good. And auto thrust disengaged and autopilot disengaged, and my controls. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we need to keep that flight director circle centered within our flight path vector, so just very small movements to keep that lined up. And just approaching 3 DME, and our speed is good. And that's 500 feet, and we're keeping that flight path vector pointed directly at our touchdown zone. Right, those 2 green lines that have just appeared are supposed to be on the outline of the runway, so something's not quite calibrated right there. A little bit distracting.
Approaching minimums.
Continue.
100.
And looking to the end of the runway. And that little plus symbol tells us we need to flare.
10.
And touch down reasonably firmly. And we will go reverses. And auto brakes kicking in, and we'll just hug that centre line, and we will disengage our auto brake, so manual braking. And there we go guys, that concludes today's tutorial on the basics of the HUD in the PMDG 737-800. I hope you enjoyed the video. Maybe you learned something new. If you did, give it a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.